I might cut everything from the beginning and just get right into this article. All right, I just cried and had a miniature meltdown about my dead mom, but I'm going to cut all of that and start now. It's Recipe for Crazy. I'm Lana Noel. If you're new here, welcome. None of this makes sense. And if it does, you probably need therapy too. Anyways, here we are. I'm just going to dedicate this episode to the Deadline article that came out about The Bachelor, titled Inside the Toxic Culture of the Bachelor Franchise as Crew Deals with Fallout of Bachelorette Pause. Extent of EP Exits Revealed. Pretty lengthy for the title of an article. However, it was a good article. Thank you, Peter White. Quite enjoyed it. Tickled my fancy. I don't know why the title's so long. I think that's the only thing that really bothers me. Like, couldn't we have made it like 5 words or something to really draw people in? I don't know. I read it and I thought, finally, these people are speaking. They really had to do it this time. The powers that be. They really had to tick a lot of people off for everyone to finally say something, because goddamn, these people have been working on this show, some of them for over 10 years, and it took them until now to finally say something. But listen, they were getting paid. You can't blame them. I did the same thing for a short period of time, and they had it good over there. Things were comfortable, as comfortable as they can be when you're literally working for horrible people. Everything I read in that article were things that I've heard a million times from every single female who worked on the show, and some males as well, but mostly females. This was nothing new to me. In fact, I think they went easy on them. I felt proud, excited. When I got to the end and read the statements from the producers and their attorneys, I couldn't help but laugh. We're great people, just ask our friends. I'm paraphrasing here. Yesterday I read the article and I felt inspired. So I started writing into my phone on my notes app without direction or really reason at all. After I finished writing, I was like, what do I do with this? For a moment, I thought maybe I would contact Deadline, send it to them. Maybe I would post it on my website where I post my recipe blogs. Or maybe I'd post it on a story on Instagram. Or maybe I'd make it into a 100-part series like Who the Fuck Did I Marry? But Who the Fuck Did I Work For on TikTok? But then I was like, I have a goddamn podcast. Maybe I'll do it all. But at least I'm going to do the podcast, because you know what? I have crippling depression in the realest fucking way. I started my Lexapro again. I just chose life this time. Didn't in November. Call back to my last episode. If you know, you know. So I chose life, and now I'm on Lexapro, and we are riding the wave until it finally kicks in, slowly but surely. Clearly, it's not 100% in my system yet, because I did start the episode crying. Oh my God, I actually am crazy. What have I done to actually prove myself to be a credible witness? Reliable source? Absolutely nothing. But I've never lied. Except if you asked my ex-boyfriend, the Italian. Apparently I did. But specifically about nicotine. But nothing serious. Just about my nicotine habits. What's a gal to do? Anywho, I'm going to read you what I wrote. I'm not doing this for really anything other than the fact that it's an interesting story. Really. Do I have this urge or drive inside of me that people need to be brought to justice? No. I think there's better people to fight that fight. Because I don't know if a person is good and sometimes does bad things, or if there are some people that are bad who just sometimes do good things. I think people are just people, and we get lost. We get attached to ideas, feelings, things, jobs, people, places, things, nouns. Nouns, for some reason, are very important to us people. And I experienced something traumatic. And after a career of telling other people's stories, I'm finally telling my own. You've probably heard me tell it before, but this time it's going to be a little different because I actually wrote it down. And I'm going to read you what I wrote in the heat of the moment after I read the article. As I read this, I might go off script here and there. Before I told you the stories surrounding my personal relationship, the relationship I had with my boyfriend while working on the show, this time it's the part of the story you always wanted me to tell. But I never did because my mom dying was enough. I didn't also need to be sued. So I chose my words carefully, arguably. And I'm still doing that here, mostly because I'm just tired of everything, all of it. And I just can't take anymore. I have nothing left. Today drained me. Except today is the past 2 years. It's been a very long day. And I'm ready for it to be a new day. Maybe this will help me. Because I love telling stories, and since my mom died, it's been hard for me to talk about my life or anything since her death. So since this is before she died, I can have some fun with it, I guess. The other difference is now there's way more producers on their hit list than just me. And I mean, they have things to do right now. Heads are rolling. So, what's little old me gonna do, I guess? Nobody believes me anyways, because after all, I'm crazy. Who's gonna believe a crazy woman? Without further ado, I'm gonna tell you a story. I sold my soul for a rose and lost everything in return. That's what I titled this. Yeah, I got real crazy with it. I'll never forget the interview that landed me a job as a producer on The Bachelor. The job I accepted knowing full well what I had just done. I signed a deal with the devil. It was 2021. I was living in Joshua Tree, engaged, and honestly, bored out of my mind. That's when the call came in. It was like dangling jerky over a beagle. I was salivating. I had just left reality TV to write a book. But who in their right mind turns down The Bachelor? Not that I was in my right mind or I've ever been, but I definitely was the most at my right mind during that time than ever. The Bachelor is the show. It's a cultural institution. There's a scripted series based on the producers' lives, for God's sake. Nobody's making award-winning television about the crew of dance moms. Though, honestly, maybe they should. The book could wait. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. What I didn't realize was that this wouldn't just be another gig. It would be the beginning of my downfall. Why tell this story now? Well, I've actually told it before. Maybe you saw it, read it, heard it. Maybe you didn't. Maybe if you did, the claims seemed too wild, too difficult to authenticate, considering the source. And the title of the podcast, of course. Who listens to a crazy person? But here's what I can tell you. I've worked on dozens of reality shows, and none of them come close to what I experienced while working on The Bachelor. So I'm going to tell you my story, again, another fraction of it. Some things I won't say, at least not yet, but for now, this is where we will start. And for that, I apologize in advance. This was the moment I sold my soul. After 2 rounds of interviews, I logged on to Zoom for my final meeting with 2 of the show's top executive producers. I had one goal in this interview: get hired by any means necessary. There's one moment from that interview that still haunts me.
Say you're producing a scene with 2 women. One of them knows something that will destroy the other's reputation. What do?
This might be a Zoom room, but I can still read it. I knew what they wanted to hear, so I gave it to them. As a producer, my job is to tell the best possible story. I go where the story takes me, no matter my personal feelings. They pushed further.
Even if it conflicts with your morals.
Oh, we asked because there was a situation on Matt James' season where it came out that a contestant was an escort. A female producer got too emotional about it. She really made a big deal about it, it was a mess. We don't want that again.
I didn't hesitate. I worked on Bad Girls Club. That should speak to my morality. They laughed. Their guards dropped. I got the job. By any means necessary, indeed. Later, one of the executives called me. His tone was candid, and that increasingly became apparent as he listed the 2 reasons they did not want to hire me, even though they did. The first was my experience level. The Bachelor prefers hiring cheap, inexperienced producers, people who can be molded. The other one was my race. You're white, he so boldly pointed out. Actually, sir, I'm Italian. For context, I was hired in the wake of Chris Harrison's exit. The franchise was under scrutiny for its lack of diversity and all that jazz, which is funny because the viewers and the audience believe Chris Harrison was removed because of that scandal, that exchange between him and Rachel Lindsay, when that is not true. That's not why he didn't return. It's for an entirely different reason, but that's another story. Let me tell you something. After a decade working in entertainment, this was the first time a man has ever said anything that actually left me stunned. You're white. I almost didn't get hired because of it. It's a weird thing to hear. There was a person who worked on the show. I remember early on them wanting to remove this person, but they couldn't because they were black. And they almost couldn't hire me because I was white. That's how decisions are being made over there. The executive continued. Despite my lack of underqualifications and my general whiteness, they hired me for one reason. You're a shark. His words, not mine. Okay, he gathered all this about me in a 45-minute interview. He said the team had grown soft. I wasn't there to make friends. I was there to shake things up, keep people on edge, make them work harder. I mean, the guy was really pumping my tires. This was an experiment for me. And it's funny because in the end, I was no shark, but I sure was surrounded by them. It was my first shoot day. The show was Bachelor in Paradise, and I wanted to quit immediately. I don't belong here. First of all, it's fucking hot in Mexico. They really aren't kidding about that. I was no shark. I was barely a guppy. Who was I kidding? There was a female contestant, the main player in a love triangle, and she refused to show any sort of emotion on camera, which was a huge problem for them because according to the story, she should be emotional about what was happening. She should be crying. She should be devastated right now, but she wouldn't break. Not for any producer. Executives were getting impatient. And then over walkie,
Can someone get her into interview?
silence. An uncomfortable amount of silence. Nobody wanted to be the one to fail. The executive snaps over walkie, and this wave of tremendous anxiety consumed me. My heart's racing. I shouldn't be here. Everybody hates me. I'm terrible at my job. And I'm looking around and nobody is doing anything, especially taking the opportunity to volunteer for this interview. I knew I had to do it, but I could not do it. I was flailing. So reluctantly, I said, Alanna will take her. I wasn't their first choice. Probably not their fifth. I was suffocating and everybody knew it. But they were out of options and I was prepared to screw this up big time. No big deal. I hated it here anyways. They warned me about the temperature, about the humidity, but nothing can prepare you for the sun in Sayulita. The heat was blistering and the sweat was made worse by my nerves and the fact that my bosses were listening in on every word from my mouth in this interview. But then something clicked. The camera rolled and I went still. I shut off my mind. I listened. I watched this contestant's every move. I found the crack and I went in. Within minutes, she was sobbing. Tears, snot, tissues, mostly from the audio guy, though he'd tell you it was just sweat. The crew lingered behind me, watching in awe as this fish out of water took flight, and the executives were shouting over walkie.
Holy shit, Alanna. You're a fucking savage. Go, go, go.
Meanwhile, this girl's sobbing, hysterical, and I'm turning down my walkie, praying that she's not hearing the spectators losing their mind. The feeling in my body was the same, except it wasn't anxiety anymore. It was excitement. It was a high no drug could replicate, no love affair could ever produce. This was no longer a job. This was a game. And I was winning. This was only my second day, and yet every day that followed throughout my time on the show felt exactly the same. Like I was drowning, except for those rare fleeting moments when I remembered I could swim, that I was a shark, or at least I used to be. Now, I'm not sure what I am anymore. The workdays weren't long. They simply did not end. Monday 10 a.m. to Tuesday at 10 a.m., normal. Once, after a grueling 20-plus hour shoot, my supervisor casually suggested, rest up. We'll reconvene at 1 p.m. Or does 1:30 work better? Like we were discussing dinner reservations. Food? Technically, it existed. There was catering, but it was half a football field away, and there was never time to eat. I lost 40 pounds while working on the show. Arguably, I probably needed it. Contestants would complain, I'm starving. And I wanted to say, me too. The sleeplessness, the hunger, the isolation, it warps your reality. And that's the fucking point. What's really going on behind the scenes? What is really the power dynamic that exists? I'll tell you. There's a department that will never be listed on the call sheet. Not a department, a club. And if you're in the club, you can get away with anything. Sex with contestants, drug use, gross misconduct. For club members, matters like these are handled quietly, carefully, and usually with a promotion. But the real phenomenon of the club wasn't just who got away with everything. It's who takes the fall when they do. During another Bachelor in Paradise, I was assigned to produce an off-site date. My producing partner was a boys' club favorite, the kind of guy executives called their protege. By the end of the date, he was 3 sheets to the wind. The only difference between that night and every other shoot day was the amount of witnesses. So the next day, I was pulled into a meeting with an executive. Not him, me.
You're a role model. It's your responsibility to keep him in check. I want to see you grow.
Me and that dude were in the same role, the same age. He was a grown man, a professional, an alcoholic, and yet somehow I'm the babysitter. The true irony is while this meeting is taking place, club members are smuggling drugs into set and snorting lines in the boom boom room with contestants. And the executive who gave me that lecture is known for sleeping with contestants himself. The hypocrisy wasn't just glaring. It was policy. The women tell all, except the truth. During Clayton's Women Tell All, my boss told me he'd Venmo me $100 if I could get my contestant, Shanae, to accuse Genevieve of sleeping with Aaron Clancy in front of a live studio audience. This would be huge for the episode. The show lived for these moments, and I lived for the highs. I got Shanae to do it. She didn't want to do it, but of course, I needed my fix. But there was one slight problem. Genevieve wasn't sleeping with Aaron Clancy from Katie's season. But you know who she was sleeping with? A producer. I never knew. Shanae never knew. But the show knew. I did my job. I manipulated people. I set aside my morals. I was sleep deprived, food deprived, and completely detached from humanity. Then they discarded me. But you know who they didn't discard? The producers who did heroin with contestants. The ones who snorted coke in the boom boom room. The ones who slept with contestants. They're still there. The men of The Bachelor always get to stay. The Bachelor franchise survives on fear. Contestants fear elimination. Producers fear losing their jobs. Viewers fear losing the illusion that love is real. It's all a lie. And I should know. I told it. That's the episode today. Sorry I haven't posted much or been around. I'm figuring life out. See you later.